Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'd like to show you how to deal with a jade plant which has got too leggy and it's got lots of spindly growth and it's just looking a bit messy and out of control. So this is quite a common problem with jade plants. Jade plants, they naturally come from a very sunny, hot location, so what they like is lots of sunshine, and if they don't get all that sunshine, what happens is they get really leggy, they get really long, thin, spindly stems. So a lot of the time people will grow jade plants in a shady location. And jade plants are quite adaptive. They will grow quite happily in an area without any sunshine for quite a long time, but they just won't grow very well. They'll get these very long, spindly stems. The stems as well, they'll often curve over and they just won't look very nice and they'll just become like a straggly mess. Another problem this can cause is it can become top heavy. So this one, for example, because it's leaning over, unless they have it propped up against the wall, this pot naturally keeps falling over, so I have to keep it propped up at the moment. And the reason this happens is the plant is searching for light, so it's growing its stems as long and thin as possible. So you can see, for example, here, there's no branching. You just get long, thin stems. You don't have any side branches forming. So what it does is it grows tall stems to try and find the light, but because the stems are quite thin and the leaves are very heavy and succulent on a jade plant, when it starts growing new leaves at the end, what happens is it then pulls it down with gravity. The gravity pulls it down, and then you get these kind of curved stems. So it doesn't get up to the light like it wants to. It just kind of flops over, and you get this messy kind of plant. So I'm going to show you in this video how you can prune it and how you can straighten some of the stems and return it to a nice looking plant. Now the main thing you need to do once you've done all these treatments is to put it in a much brighter, sunnier location. You have to deal with the original root of the problem, otherwise the issues are just going to come back in a few months' time or a few years' time, and you're just going to be back to square one. So make sure once you've done this treatment, put it in the sunniest place you can find. It needs at least a few hours of sunshine every day to be growing at its best. If you can't give it enough daylight, just give it as much daylight as you can, and ideally if it's not getting any sunlight at all, try and get a grow lamp on it for a few hours a day. That will help it grow much bushier growth, much stockier growth, and you'll get a much better branching plant. This is an example of one of my plants which has been growing in a nice sunny location. You can see here it's got lots of branches on it. Each branch comes up and then splits into several other branches, so it doesn't just grow long leggy growth. The growth is all sticking upwards as well, holding its own weight, and it's just generally a nice strong bushy growth, and that's what you're wanting. And if you give it enough light, that's what you will get. So before you carry out any pruning, what I would do is try and put it in a sunnier, brighter location for at least 2 or 3 weeks before you carry out any pruning. This way the plant can build up its energy reserves and it will respond better to the pruning. You can do it without this initial 2 or 3 week period of charging up the plant's energy by putting it in a brighter location, but it will just take a little bit longer to recover and you've got more chance of dieback as well. So one of the first things you need to do is take off all this leggy growth. What you want to do is follow it back into an area where it branches. What you want is the stem to come up, and every few inches or centimeters you just want it to have another branch coming off. So you don't want this kind of long growth without any branches at all. That just encourages it to start flopping over. When it branches, it gives it a much sturdier, stronger appearance. So if you follow the branch back, find an area where it's branching, go up 2 or 3 sections. So each section here, there's a little node basically in the middle where the leaves originally came out. This is where new growth can appear from. So if I show you on these larger sections, because it's more obvious in a larger part of the plant, these are the internodes, which are the spaces between the nodes where the leaves come and the shoots will come from. So when you cut it, you want to cut it in between. The reason for that is you're not going to damage any of the nodes. And if it's quite a big space like this, cut it towards the lower section, because what will happen is this top section that doesn't have anything above it will just die off, and it will just regrow from this lower section here where the node is. So you want to cut it in the middle if it's quite small spacing. If it's big spacing like this, just cut it slightly further down. That way you get less dieback and it looks a bit nicer. So what I'm going to do in this plant, follow back the long stems, find where it's branching, go up 1 or 2 of the internodes, and then just trim it off. And it's going to look quite drastic, but what this will do is it will get rid of a lot of the excess weight, so this will no longer be needing to be supported by any stakes or anything like that. It's going to stop it flopping over, because the top heavy growth has been taken off so it can support its own weight. But also this will encourage lots of new side shoots to form and lots of new branches, and if then grown in a higher light environment, they're going to be much bushier. And even if you don't grow this in a highlight environment afterwards, if you keep pruning it like this, it just stops the long leggy growth, encourages more branching, and you won't have these long kind of cascading stems which causes the problems. So that's taken a lot of the weight off the plant. As you can see, it's now supporting itself. It doesn't need any help to support it. But what I'm going to show you now is how you can straighten up a curved trunk, even a more mature trunk. So if your stems are still nice and straight after the initial prune, you can just skip this stage. This is just to show you what to do if you do have any curved stems and your whole plant's looking a bit misshapen because of that. So what you can do is you can get a bamboo cane, and you want to place it quite close to the stem, but you have to be careful not to break any roots if you can. And then all you need to do is tie lots of strings around. What this does is it will pull the stem straighter. You won't straighten it straight away, but what you want to do is keep the pressure on there, and over time, as this plant starts to regrow, it will actually naturally form a straighter stem, and you just need to keep tightening the strings as the stem straightens, and eventually you'll be left with a nice straight stem again. So you can see from that the stem's already instantly a lot straighter. This won't fix it straight away. If I was to cut these, this would spring back quite quickly. Also, with this, if it's a very curved stem, you can't do it all in one movement, otherwise it will actually snap the stem if it's too curved. So what you need to do is tie it up as much as you can without snapping it. You can normally feel when you're bending back the stem, the give point, you just don't want to go past that, otherwise it will snap. They are quite brittle, these stems, so don't force them too much. You will need to have quite a bit of pressure on the strings though, just to make sure that it does pull back enough and you do get a quick enough movement, otherwise it will take a long time if you don't have enough tension on it. It's just a trade-off between the speed of straightening the stem and actually damaging and breaking the stem. So once it's been on for about 2 or 3 weeks, what you can then do is remove all the original strings and then put on some new strings even tighter, and then just keep tightening it every 3 or 4 weeks, maybe once a month, depends how fast your plant's growing and how thick the stem is. The thicker the stem, the longer this will take. If it's a thin stem, you can probably just do it in a month or two. A thick stem will take maybe a year to fully straighten up, and you'll need to adjust it once a month. A thin stem, you can probably adjust it once a week, and you probably get it completely straight in a month. So just keep straightening it up as you can, and then eventually what you can do is cut off the stem completely. It'll be nice and straight, and you won't need this support anymore. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back to you at the end of the video, which will be several weeks later, maybe a couple of months later. You'll see what will happen with this plant. It should put on lots of new growth at the top. There should be lots of new branches starting to form out above from where I've cut it. It'll give a nice branch structure. Also, this stem should start to look a little bit straighter. What I might do in the next time is, as you see when I rotate it round, it's slightly bent this way. I might move the stake to this side and straighten it up, or have 2 stakes straightening it. And I'll just continue the straightening and keep it in a nice sunny location. I'll also give it a feed once it's got strong growth coming on it, just to make sure it's going to put on some good growth. And that'll just give you an idea of how much will regrow and what to expect when it's regrowing. So it's now 3 months later, and as you can see, the whole plant's looking an awful lot better. The trunk itself is much straighter as well. As you see, as I rotate it here, you'll see that it's mostly straight now. There's not much more adjustments need to be done to straighten it up fully. So what I'm going to do now is remove these ties and also take out the bamboo cane, because it's not really necessary anymore. If I wanted to get it absolutely perfectly straight, I could leave it on for a bit longer. You can still see there's a slight angle here and there, so I could maybe move this around to the side, but generally the trunk is now straight enough that I'm quite happy with it. So as it's been training for several months now, 3 months in total, you can see that the trunk now can keep itself supported quite nicely without the need of that stake. With the slight exception of a slight curve there, it's generally quite nice and straight. So this is what you should be expecting if you put it in a bright location and you pruned it hard. You can probably see up here, everywhere I've cut it has put out at least 1 shoot, some places 2 shoots. That's quite common. When you cut it, you normally get twice the number of shoots coming out. But what can also happen is if you put it in a much brighter location and it's a lot happier, you'll get loads of new shoots coming from all over the trunk. So you can see here, basically every node has started to grow on here. There's loads of new growth coming out from everywhere. But I quite like this clear stem look. So what you can do with this is just choose which branches you want to keep, which ones you want to get rid of. But I would quite like to get rid of these. And when it comes to very young growth, the best thing is actually just to break it off with your finger. it's kind of too small and difficult to get with secateurs, and you're more likely to actually damage the trunk itself. The same with these new shoots. If they're very young shoots, I would just snap them off by hand. They won't be thick at all, and they'll be easy to remove with your bare hands. So that's cleared up the stem now, giving it more the appearance I would like. And when it comes to the other shoots, what you should find, they should start branching naturally. So this one over here, for example, you can see it's already getting a size shoot already, so it's starting to naturally branch. And if it has got plenty of light, it should branch every 2 or 3 leaves quite happily by itself. If it doesn't, just get the secateurs and just cut it as I showed you previously, and it should resprout and have more branches. But this is generally what you should expect, and if you have any questions about the process or anything, please leave a comment down below. And I wish you good luck with your jade plant, and hopefully you'll have similar results where you cut back all the long leggy growth and then should get nice short healthy growth in return.